Go. This is going to be the starting cutscene. And for a starting cutscene, what you've already done, if you listen to the last tutorial, you get your 3 scene qualities, you've re-narrated what the scene looks like, you've asked yes/no questions, you've added up your plot stress. Now you start the scene, and you do that by testing plot stress. That means roll a D percentile, and if you roll below your current plot stress, then an unexpected event happens. You'll need to roll down here in the unexpected events for something random and then apply it. There's an appendix for those unexpected events that gives you some ideas of what each one means, and then you figure out your focus and what does it mean for that particular type of character. If it doesn't make any sense, you can safely ignore it, but a lot of those potential roles are pretty dangerous. So you may want to avoid unexpected events as much as possible. Try to minimize your plot stress by, ask yes/no questions, don't go overboard, and try to minimize your overall checks. The longer you take, the more likely plot stress is going to come back to bite you with an unexpected event. So, first starting scene. You have your 3 scene qualities, you've done your re-narrating, tested for plot stress to start. Now, I always recommend that the start is a cutscene. You're getting information, and you typically want to have it from someone who's going to assign you that mission, and that typically would be another person with whom to have a dialogue. It's just an easier way to do things. You can riff on this stuff as you become more familiar with the rules, but for now, once you get started, I'd say just go with the plain old vanilla. It's a cutscene, there's another person. It could be a patron or a random person, but you have a conversation with that person that then drives information to your player's character. So the first thing that you'd always ask is, under the structured questions for persons, does the person have a need? That means basically, do they have something that they want me to do? And the answer for that for the first mission is always going to be, for the first cutscene is always going to be yes, because the next follow-on is what does the person need, which is a mission. They're going to assign you a mission. That's what kicks off the story. So that's where you're going to start the dialogue by saying, there can be small talk that you narrate in. How are the wife and kids? How's business? Do you enjoy parcheesi? Whatever small talk there might be. But then you get around to say, why are we having this meeting? And there's a particular thing you noticed or you know about. What does that end up being the catalyst for this particular story you're telling? And once you figure that out, you go down to your, that is, once you get that part of the dialogue, you always say yes for your first cutscene, and then you roll a random mission, which is a D20 down here, which is kind of a starting verb that tells you what's going on. It could be capture or spy or escape or defend or attack or any one of these things. Once you get that, you can then follow up with, if you're still getting a hold of things, Appendix 4 in the book, which gives you a couple pages on different types of missions and then shows you, what is the type of mission and then what is the typical target for that and what's a description of it. So, for instance, if you roll a negotiate, a typical target for that is a person. You don't negotiate with a building. So you have your target. You can roll a random person, or if you have one that's in mind that you go, this is perfect for the background that I've given my character. It's negotiating with Bob. Bob is important to my character. You can just arbitrarily decide that's what it is and that's what I'm going to do. But here it shows you, meet with another party, potentially use hostile, target the leadership and the opposing party, sign a truce, get some sort of negotiation that they hopefully agree to, but at least you make the attempt. Again, missions don't always have to succeed the way that you expect from these, but it gives you the kickoff goal that you're trying to achieve. And each one is kind of different here with escaping. Typically means the person, which is you, or it could be another person, to say your patron needs them to help escape some sort of a dangerous situation. And again, Appendix 4 will just give you a better idea if you need some additional guidance as to what these various verbs mean. Okay, so there, again, from here, if you get patrol, it would be a place, probably a wilderness place, and you can roll a random wilderness place or assign one if you have one already in mind. This whole thing may seem a little loosey-goosey, but it all works pretty well once you figure out, like, okay, here's the kind of setting we've got. So if I get an explore, here's the kind of area that I should be exploring. Maybe my map's already got something about it, or I can just roll randomly and say, oh, it's explore ruins and buildings. Oh gosh, there happens to be a place that has ruins and buildings in my setting. I can then ask a yes/no question if I'm not sure what kind of ruins or settings, or ask a bunch in order to figure out, is it this particular ruin? Is it some other ruin? Is it a ruin that we know about? Then if you go into additional dialogue with your patron or ally or person of interest you're having that discussion with, you can then ask, what is the reason behind that need? If the person is willing to disclose, and this is one of the key things, it's sort of a variant of what I'll call exposing the unknown, which is a very important piece of Libre Solo role-playing. With each question, besides the first where you get that mission, you're always going to have to ask first, is this something that this person's going to be willing to tell me kind of off the cuff? If not, you may need to make a negotiate roll or an intimidate roll or some sort of other roll, usually a social skill check, that will then reveal that information. So in other words, your contact may be reluctant to disclose. You're going to have to make that call. If they are going to be reluctant to talk about, what's the reason why they want a particular thing done, your character will have to make a skill check. We'll go into more about how to make skill checks with the RPG rules and with your own rules in a bit. But you make that skill check, and then if you've made that skill check, then you can say, does that person actually know? If you're not sure if they know the answer or not. So it's a two-step thing to say, first evaluate when they say, does the person have an item that they're willing to give me for the mission? I want a jetpack. Can they give me a jetpack because I think it's important for this mission? Well, first you may need to make a skill check. It's an expensive thing, and your patron may not want to give you one, or it's someone who doesn't know you that well, who doesn't want to just hand you money or gear. So you'll have to convince them, potentially. If you do, and you do successfully convince them, then you can then roll, is this gear actually available? Does this person have it? If that's also an issue. So always think through those two things as you go through the structured questions and decide which ones to ask. You can ask in any order you'd like. You can set the probabilities at what you think is reasonable. But again, it's this, do they supply special equipment? Will they provide an ally, or will they be an ally for the mission? Will they provide extra valuables if you succeed? Is there a destination place that they already know about? Some of these things may need to be researched if your patron or ally giving you the mission may not know these things. So it's always up to you to kind of figure out, do I need to make the skill check in order to get them to tell me, to convince them one way or the other to tell me? And then do I need to see with a yes/no question, do they actually know the answer, or do they actually have the resource that they can give me? Once you're done with the structured questions for persons that you're interested in, and by the way, you go through that and you get like skill check successes and you get like a place or extra gear or whatever, you can always ask yes/no questions to follow up to say, is it this kind of a jetpack? Is it that kind of special gear? Or if you get an ally, you can roll under the foe table, which doubles as an ally table, and then find out what kind of an ally is available. Or again, if you have a particular ally under your character sheet, you can choose that person and say, it's Bob, because Bob is my good friend. And if an ally were to get selected, it would certainly be Bob. So that gives you an idea. Again, it seems loosey-goosey. Trust me, it actually works pretty well to figure out the cutscene. There will be a fair amount of rolling to set all of this up, but by the end of that discussion, you'll have a pretty good idea after doing the structured questions of what a mission's about, what you're expected to do, and you can start thinking about how you're actually going to do it. At the end of the scene, you test plot stress one more time. You're building up plot stress, by the way, with every skill check and every yes/no question you make. We'll get into more about how that plot stress mechanic works, but at the end of it, you test plot stress one more time, rolling D100 against whatever you've gotten it up to. And then if you roll above that number, you just close the scene out quietly. If you roll below, well, then you get an unexpected event before you can close out the scene that you're going to have to deal with before you can close it out. And that's the quick and dirty on how to put together a cutscene.